Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. So today I'm delighted to be joined by Christian. Christian, great to have you on the podcast. Thank you for making the time today. Really appreciate it, my friend.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. It was nice to hear that someone wanted to listen to me speak.
Yeah. Well, I know you're doing a lot out there to share your story. You're working on sharing your story. You're talking about your experience. You're supporting others, and that's what Thriving Adoptees is all about, right? Helping fellow adoptees, helping adopters, and let's learn from one another. Let's have the stories, but even more important than the stories for me are the learnings from those stories, because that way we can help people progress up their own individual learning curves, right? So there's great work on the stories. Lots of doing people great work on the stories. When I set up Thriving Adoptees, I wanted to make it, yes, the story, but most importantly the learning. So I think I heard some of your story on another. Well, I don't think, I know I heard some of your story on another podcast before we spoke for the first time. So can you tell us a little, can you introduce yourself to the audience and maybe tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, so a little bit where I'm at now. My name's Christian Mayer. I was adopted from Santiago, Chile, and I grew up in the United States my whole life. I was adopted from birth, so I was in Chile for a little under a year before I came to the States with my parents. Right now, I just graduated Temple with a degree in psychology. I look forward to pursuing a doctorate degree, and in psychology and adoption related research and family studies. That's what my main focus wants to be. Yeah, so now I just moved back to Chile during the pandemic, and I'm in contact with my birth family. So I've been able to be a lot closer to them and spend some time with them. But I think more important than that is how I got here to where I am today. So
because you definitely had some tricky stuff. You had some really. I don't know whether tricky is being polite or underplaying it, or I'm British, right? So I edge on politeness.
Yeah,
you've come through some tough times.
Yeah, definitely. So growing up, I think a lot of it's like what came first, the chicken or the egg type scenarios. Like growing up, I got tested a lot for ADHD and ADD in elementary school and middle school, even some high school. So I got a lot of testing done. Eventually, middle school, I went to a therapist for the first time, and I wasn't ready at all. I felt like, being an only child, I felt like it was my parents trying to team up on me with a stranger and just cornering me in a room. So a lot of times that ended up in fights, and I think for that time period, the information wasn't there about adoption informed therapy, where there wasn't as many people that knew about that. So I think he thought I was just kind of a stubborn child, when really I was hurting a lot inside. But
what year are we talking? What years are we talking?
So I was probably about 12, which would have been 2007.
Right.
So I don't think we had the information that we have today. I know it's only been a short time, but there's been a lot of research done in that time. And
well, yeah.
So now I think
there's therapists and therapists, right?
Yeah.
You know, like some of the coaches that I've had, one mentor in particular, I wouldn't call her trauma informed, but I started working with her 2008, 2009, and I never fought with her. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. She wasn't trauma informed.
Yeah.
But she's more of a mentor and a coach than a strictly trained therapist. But I hear the circles I move in. I know a lot of therapists, not in the adoption sector. I'm talking about outside of the adoption sector. Therapists who are classically trained and find it doesn't work. So
Yeah.
classic. I'm talking in general here. I'm not saying adoption. I've never really spoken to a few adoption therapists. I guess we've had some on the show, but I mean, people that have been trained in the States classically as therapists and have become burnt out. So, like who wants to work with a therapist about stress who is stressed? Do you know what I mean? Who wants to work with a dietitian who is 100 pounds overweight? Who wants to be treated by a doctor who smokes? Like, we can't follow. We got to follow people who are walking the walk as well as talking.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, so I think with the patient therapist relationship, it's like any relationship. You're not going to click with everyone you meet. You're not going to be friends with everybody that you meet, and it's not a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's just the way it is, and finding that therapeutic alliance that's right for you is what's important.
Yeah, for sure.
And also at the time, being 12 years old, I wasn't ready to have someone tell me I was wrong, especially. It's difficult enough with your parents telling you something's wrong. when you have some stranger come in and tell you as well, it's a lot bigger of a pill to swallow.
I've been on the other side of that, right? So I've been called in by a parent, did some work with kids a few years ago. All my work was in elementary school, did some one-to-one work. Some of that work went great, but there was often a sense that the child feels like, you talked about being tested, right? So we start to believe there's something wrong with us, whatever age we are, right? We start to believe that there's something wrong with us, and that can kind of become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Or we can fight, like as you say, you were fighting against it, and you start to, we kind of know intuitively at 12, if our parents get us involved with a therapist or any sort of stranger for an intervention, we think the alarm bells start ringing, right? For many kids, the alarm bells start ringing, and then we're going to fight that. We're going to question it, and as you say, we don't feel that people are on our side. So you didn't think your parents were on your side. You didn't think the therapist was on the side, and then suddenly we're alone, and it's tougher, right? I guess that's what must have happened.
I spent a lot of time, again, being an only child, I spent a lot of time isolating myself in my room. And it's not that I was arguing with my parents all the time, but over things big, like it was over not doing like the dishes, and I get really self-defensive about it. Or it's like this was my thing, I wouldn't hand in like homework assignments that I'd finished, which was very bizarre, but I've heard that happening with other people too. So I'm interested to hear if that happens with others.
Right, yeah.
And so stuff like that. And then like they gave me like these organizing coaches too to help me like stay organized. But like I feel like I knew that, like I knew how to stay organized. I just wasn't. So I kind of felt like I was under a microscope, and a lot of times ended up being in isolation. An interesting thing that happened was a lot of these times I was isolated, I always wished, and growing up, I always wished I had an older brother. And I thought adoption was something where you could just kind of go to a store and pick up a kid and bring him home. And I'd ask my parents if they could get me specifically an older brother. And then years later, I'd find out that I do have an older brother.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of neat. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about how the story progressed then, your story progressed.
Yeah. So what was it? Went to high school. Everything was like pretty much fine. I never got in trouble really for school. I think once in middle school I got called into the principal's office for I don't know. We were like shooting like paper balls at each other, something
Yeah.
nothing bad.
Nothing bad.
Then also I think it's important to mention growing up this whole time I had a very close group of friends who are still my friends today. I think that's something that through growing up I've heard is kind of rare. But going into high school, same friends and everything. Everything was normal there. I played sports there. I was a good athlete. I was a varsity soccer player and a varsity lacrosse player for 3 years. And captain of the lacrosse team my senior year. And I think I put a lot more importance on sports than I did on school. But it was kind of another effect where I had to have I couldn't fail any classes or else I'd be kicked off the sports team. So I never failed any courses. I got some low grades a few times, but I also got some high grades. So it was very frustrating as well to see myself do well half the time, and the other half I wasn't doing my full potential. Um, but again, sports where it was 2 hours of my day after school that I could just kind of turn my brain off and go run and get rid of a lot of emotions that I had. Um, and then nothing quite significant happened in high school. I can think of eventually I got recruited to play lacrosse in college. Um, and after that, I was pretty much done with school and just thought like, okay, I got into a school. I'm getting recruited to play. Like, I just need to keep my grades up a little bit, and they'll let me in. So that's what happened. Um, then graduated. I went. I didn't party much or anything. Our town was like I lived in a very good area, so the cops had nothing better to do than bust underage parties.
Yeah.
So we didn't have that many parties in high school, but I remember I did black out at a few of them, and I didn't think anything of it really. I thought we were just having fun, and it was just learning and growing up, like learning what my limits were, how to party responsibly. Um, so then after that, I graduated. Went to senior week, which is after we graduate, we rent out like a beach house or a mountain house. For us, it was a beach house for a week, and your whole most of the people in your grade go there and you party for a week straight after graduation. And then after that, I came home, um, unpacked, and then repacked all of my stuff and got ready for a music festival for 4 days. Um, and went to that music festival. It was a lot of fun. But it was the first time I was out on my own, really, where I felt like my parents weren't breathing down my neck. I wouldn't say they weren't tiger parents by any means, but they were always curious and I'm worried about what I was doing, who I was hanging out with. Um, Obviously, as a teenager, you get I think that's just part of being a teenager. Where you're like, Mom, like, stop asking me about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're just being cautious with me. I think another part of this is with every argument I was in, every time I was in trouble, I would always say I'm fine. Those were my favorite words is I'm fine. And if anything was wrong, I'd be like, no, I'm fine. And kind of use that as a defense. Sorry, that was like a random thought, but it's something that my mom heard a lot of and knew things weren't fine. Um, so after that summer, I went to college and at Albright College in Pennsylvania. It was a liberal arts school, which I really liked because I think it's important to learn a little bit of everything. Um, and I went in as a marketing major, but I thought it was interesting and I always told people first that I went there to play lacrosse. not I went there as a marketing major. Um, so early on, I met a lot of friends that I still consider close friends today, but we got out to a quick start with partying. Um, the drinking age here is 21, so it's at 18 years old, we weren't allowed to have alcohol in our rooms or anything. And I quickly learned the rules as I had gotten written up, so like a school citation, 3 times within my first semester there, and got in trouble there. And then fourth time I was at a different school that same semester, and I had to get my parents to come pick me up because I got caught by their security there for being too drunk. Um, then my parents were like, "You're not going to school," and this is where like a big um I'd say an important part came in where I met my therapist that I have today. Um, I think he honestly saved my life. But again, something I couldn't see at the time where he told me his story. He was a heroin addict in recovery, and he was the first person to tell me I was an alcoholic. And I kind of looked at him and I was just like, "You're dude, you're a heroin addict. Like you don't know what you're talking about." um, and it was it's I'm laughing because he knows this, that we joke about this today. And he was just like, all right, well, we'll see. And then he was the first person to listen to me about my adoption, and take me seriously on my emotions and my feelings about it, and understand me. And we,
He was on your side.
although yeah,
This time you
he
had a
was
therapist
like,
was on your side, yeah.
yeah, he was like, that's a thing. Like your feelings are legitimate, and you're like, other people feel this way too, and it's not just you. You're not alone. Um, and then So then he sent me to an outpatient um, rehab facility called Rehab After Work. I got through that without drinking fairly easily. I just did it so I could get back to school, and and I got back into school for the following um, year, and stayed out of trouble a little bit. And during this time, he had started to push me to like, all right, you should look into your adoption stuff, and it's cool that you're adopted, and like um and you should go back to Chile, because he actually spent time here in Chile traveling to Patagonia. So he had known about the country, which was even cooler, another way to relate with him. And he always tried to motivate me to go visit, even if I didn't know anyone here. Just go visit, get back to your roots. And yeah, so then I went back to Albright College my sophomore year. What would have should have been my sophomore year. I was 20 years old, and I don't know what it was. One day I was like, I want to find my birth mom, and I just need to know if she's looking for me. That was my thing. I was like, good or bad, like I need closure. It's okay if she says like, I don't want to talk to you, because then I'll know that she doesn't want to talk. I don't have to sit here wondering, why does she want to, does she not? And then so I messaged this lady from Texas, the United States, who's a lawyer, and she's specifically helped Chilean adoptees find their birth parents. So without telling my parents, I snuck into their fire safe, um, took all of my documents, took everything that this lady needed, sent them to her without thinking twice. And I think a few months later she got back to me and was like, we have a hit. We located your birth mom. She's in Santiago, Chile. Um,
And when was this,
what
Christian? How many years
this
ago?
was when I was 20, so this happened in um
2015.
yeah, 2015. Um, and so then she was like, oh yeah, we found your birth mom. you can, here's what's gonna happen. The police are gonna go to her house. They're like, she told me you have to change your name because they legally can't give you your legal name. So I changed my name on Facebook to something else. I actually still have it changed today. I don't know why I haven't changed it back. Um, and after waiting for what felt like years, it was only a few weeks, I think, and my birth mom said, um, I got I got information back from the police that she was interested in reaching out, and they gave her the name that I use for Facebook, and she found me through there, and she just like apologized for um this is like the first time I've gotten emotional during this story. I think it's because I'm back here in
Yeah, buddy.
Chile with her.
I'm with
Um
you. I feel for you.
yeah.
Yeah.
That she was sorry. She wanted to come meet me. She had prayed for me every day. Um and that she was so happy that all of her prayers had been answered um after 20 years. And that right there was the best news I've received in my life.
Yeah.
Um Finally the questions, all my questions were answered. It wasn't even necessarily what was in her response. It was that she responded. Um that's what spoke the most to me.
Yeah.
I remember seeing her picture and I was like, I do look like her. I know that's I saw a research study that's the adoptees number one question is do I look like her? Um
Yeah.
and I think I did a little bit. Um I heard after that we spoke for a little bit, and I asked her where's my birth father at? And she told me she was sexually assaulted, she was raped, and that's how I was conceived, and that kind of destroyed all the momentum of the emotions I was feeling. I was still drinking at that point. I'd started drinking again before that, and as I've learned now, I'm not able to think straight when I drink at all. And I started blaming myself for my own conception. Makes no sense when you talk about it like out loud. Like I was like, if I wasn't born, she wouldn't have been raped or wouldn't have to live with these emotions that she lives with of being raped. It doesn't make sense. But at that time, I'd fully convinced myself that uh, she would have been better without me. Um, and that stuck with me a lot to the point where after she told me that, I blacked out. Originally, I blacked out and forgot about it, and that happened two more times. Um, it got to the point where she got pretty angry with me that I asked her, and she asked me, "Why do you keep asking me this stuff? Um, I've told you multiple times." And I had nothing to blame but the fact that I'd gotten blackout drunk every time afterwards, um, because it was something I wasn't ready to handle. But to go back a little bit, after I found her and she told me all this stuff, I met with my therapist, told him like, hey, I met my birth mom, we're in contact. I have a birth brother. I have a bunch of aunts and uncles here. I have a huge family for being only one side of a family. My birth mom's one of nine, I think it is. Um, and I talked to my parents. Finally, I was horrified because I didn't want to hurt their feelings. During all of growing up, I never wanted to tell them how I felt because I didn't want to hurt their feelings. Um, I didn't think they'd be able to understand, and I didn't think they would accept what I had to say. And also, I felt a lot of guilt and shame about having them give me everything they've given me and saying I don't feel good. I don't feel like I'm at home. Uh, I don't feel okay. Um, I didn't think they'd be able to handle that. And so finally, this is the first time I spoke to them. I said, listen, I went out and looked for my birth mom. And my mom specifically is who I worried about the most. She was excited, but she was also hurt and that I didn't tell her about this process I was going through. And she was definitely like, she was a little angry too. She was everything. Um, but I got to tell her like, listen, like me looking for them isn't to take away from you or anything that you've done for me. It doesn't take any of this love that I have for you away. It's just something I need to heal. And after a little bit of time, not even like much time at all, she came around and got to understand a little bit and understood that what was getting in the way of her feeling okay. And she was able to tell me that it was like a little bit of her own ego was the reason she was upset. And I thought that was really special to have someone that can understand their own emotions and be emotionally aware like that to say like, hey, this is, I'm upset, but it's only because of me and I trust you. I think that's the first time I felt like I was fully trusted by my parents to uh, when she's like, I understand like um that you could love us and care for us and that's changed a lot. Uh, so to go on, I kept drinking for a long time. My relationships with my partners always seemed to last for a year. I thought that was interesting because I don't know, I just thought that was an interesting timeline. All my relationships with girlfriends would last for a year and that was it. And then um finally kept drinking, screwed up a few relationships, um, kept drinking for a few more years until I was 20, 22, and I stopped for 6 months. Had a girlfriend break up with me and then went off the rails. And then ended up in an inpatient rehab for the first time in my life. Um, I'd essentially tried to drink myself to death one day. I've been drinking for over a month straight, about um, definitely like half a bottle a day, and then I go to the bar and drink some more while I was working. I'd been kicked out of school at this point, and that was it was a lot going on. Um, so then I went to rehab, and that was the first time. That was the first time that I got to look at myself and think like this adoption really messed me up. I have a lot of issues specifically with women, trust issues. Um, I'm still hurting inside, and but I understood that all of it could be fixed. I had a lot of work to do. It wasn't like I was broken and beaten and not good for anything anymore. I was still plenty good for a lot of things. I just needed to work. I worked a lot. I worked with my therapist after that. I spent a month in rehab and then worked with my therapist a lot on these issues and these topics that were a direct result of this my adoption. So after some time, I started a group because when I was in rehab, I met like I met it was a crazy story. My parents met a family who was adopting a kid in Chile. Same time I was being adopted. Um, they're from Virginia. I was in rehab. I met this other kid from Virginia. He was like, "Yo, I grew up in this town in Virginia," and he grew up right next to where my cousin was. I was like, do you know my cousin? I call him my cousin. Sorry, this family friend. Um, do you know my cousin so and so? And he's like, I played soccer with him. It turns out his parents, my cousin's parents, gave this guy's parents the name of their adoption agency that they used, and used the same agency to adopt him. So it was an incredibly small world. But I saw a handful of kids who were adopted there, and then after I left, I went on to check it out, and there was a really high number of adoptees with drug and alcohol problems, as well as incarceration issues. And to see that I had never been incarcerated in my life was, I felt oddly blessed after that, because I saw that the odds weren't in my favor at all for any of these things. So after that, I left and I got better, went to therapy, went to 12-step programs, did a lot of soul searching through these things. Like I did a lot of work on myself. I looked at things I didn't want to look at.
What did you learn? What did you learn that helped you continue? What helped you turn the corner, continue to turn it?
So I had mentors that told me everything stems from fear. So if I'm feeling something, it's because I'm afraid. Normally, as when we talked yesterday, like I think we're very primal beings that evolve very quickly. So I think when we're feeling jealous, when we're feeling angry, when we're feeling stressed, it's all things, it all stems from fear. So after that, we need to ask ourselves, like, what am I afraid of? It can be something as small as for instance, for me, when I went back to school, like, why am I procrastinating right now? Why can't I start this paper? And I'd sit there and I'd ask myself, I'm like, what am I afraid of? Am I afraid my teacher's going to judge my work? That's like, yes, that's their job. But if I do good work, I'll get rewarded for that. And I'm capable of these things. Or something bit bigger where when I looked at relationships, which was always kind of like a struggle for me, I'd be like, what am I afraid of? I'm afraid people are going to leave me. And I kind of talk that down, like, look, I'm a good guy. I do the right things when I'm not drinking. I do the right things. Like, if somebody's going to leave me, it's going to be because of them. It's not going to be because of me. And sometimes things just don't work out. And so I was able to like start looking at that, and now I feel like I'm able to have healthy, like loving relationships.
Yeah. So you saw
So
the gap between you, sober you, and drunk you, if I can
yeah,
put it bluntly. So you kind of realized that the fear was driving the drink was taking you further away from who you would choose to be normally, right?
yeah,
Is
yeah,
that about
yeah,
it? I mean, so
yeah.
I'm
No,
not a
that's
shrink, right? I'm not a shrink. I'm just trying to put I'm trying to put the things together.
yeah, that's it to a T, where it's like I saw that I couldn't be who I wanted to be. I couldn't be who other people needed me to be when I was drinking. And I did a lot of things that when I was drunk that I would never do sober. I wouldn't even think about doing them when I was sober.
Yeah,
I was completely
that's what
disloyal,
drink. Yeah,
dishonest. Yeah,
that's what drink does to us, right?
yeah.
Whoever we are.
So yeah. Um, so that's, and I was like, once again, I can't be my authentic self, and this time it's from like my own fault. um, but also before that, in 2016, so I got in contact 2015, 2016, my brother came to visit me here, with his fiance at the time, who's now his wife, um, for the Copa America, and that was awesome. That was a great experience. Definitely felt weird for like the first 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and then after that, it's like we felt like we had known each other our whole lives. I think in a sense we have. Um, and so we watched the Copa America here in Philadelphia.
So that's
And
this is the American Cup. So this is the American Cup for clubs. Yeah, it's the club or it's the
no, it's uh South America.
it's the South American Club Championship or the National
No,
Championship.
yeah, international. So we got to see Chile versus Panama
Right. Okay.
there, and that was a great experience. And then in
So
20,
you felt like you fitted in, right? You fitted
yeah,
right
yeah, definitely.
into that
Um,
because you were in a better place. Do you think?
at that point, I felt like I was all right.
Yeah.
Nothing terrible. And then
I'm juxtaposing this. I'm comparing this
yeah,
to the kid that was felt the only child that felt he was alone,
yeah,
he was locked in the
yeah,
room, right? And I'm fast forwarding whatever it is, 23 years, sorry, 13 years to now. You've kind of you've found you found connection, you found yourself.
yeah,
So you're less afraid. You're spending less time afraid. You're spending less time drinking, and you're spending more time. You're connecting better with other people, and you're feeling like you're fitting.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So and during this period, so I didn't get sober until um summer of 2018. Um, so before that, I was feeling like here and there, or 2018. I was feeling here and there on and off. Um, but that winter of earlier that February of 2018, um, I always say it's like the best week of my life. I wasn't drinking at that point. I'm not gonna say I was sober because I wasn't working a 12-step program, but I wasn't drinking for that period. And and he came and visited again with his wife, with some of their friends in New York City. Went there, hung out with them, had a blast. Um, I think that was the time. I remember he pushed me on a swing, and that that was one of the happiest moments of my life as well. It was extremely weird to think as a 21, or how old was I then? 23, sorry. Um, as a 23-year-old young adult, that being pushed on a swing at that age would be um one of the best things I've ever felt in my life. It's been something I've been waiting for so long.
Yeah. I think
Like I
maybe it was
said,
the connection. I think it was maybe the
yeah,
connection rather than the string, than the swing, right?
yeah, yeah. Like I said, I'd grown up asking for an older brother my whole life. Um, so I wouldn't have to push myself on this way.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and then
Did it
I
bring a
went,
tear to your eye? That.
yeah, yeah. Um, it was weird to kind of look at it and be like, I normally don't cry on swings.
No, I don't. I wouldn't imagine you spend a lot of times on swings.
Yeah. Um, so and then at the end of the week, they were leaving the following day. I went back to Philadelphia, and the Philadelphia Eagles, American football team, won the Super Bowl.
So it's
And
all around, yeah.
that was like the best week of my life. And then so flash forward again. What?
I was gonna say, I don't. An idea just popped into my head, right? So, what would you say to an adoptee that's struggling right now on the basis of how you've come through this stuff?
For one that's struggling right now, I think it would all depend on what they're struggling with. I'm a big advocate of, like, I think, and I've seen it a lot with adoptees. If they're struggling, I think they need to take an honest look at themselves in the mirror and see if they are drinking or partying excessively. I think they need to look at the facts of the matter, that the chances are, if they're doing this, they're probably an alcoholic or a drug addict, and there's nothing wrong with either of those. I think those names carry a bad connotation with them. Um, But if they're struggling with those, I think they need to get sober, and that way they can take an honest like an honest look at themselves. Because for so many years, I tell myself I'm going to stop drinking, which I did, but I still wasn't able to change the way I wanted to because I still had the mindset of an alcoholic, of a drug addict. And I think after that they can begin to heal. If they can't, um, or if they don't have those issues that I do, or if they have other, I've seen this too with other issues. I think there have been eating disorder issues that are highly associated with adoption amongst females. Um, any other type of disorder, like types of issues, I think need to get resolved first or be addressed first.
Yeah.
So you can kind of start cleaning house. And then you can get down to like the nitty gritty, the very fine tuning of things. Cause I think after you do that fine tuning, that's when you see the change. That's when you see the results of all your hard work. And also having somebody that you can go to. It could be friends, it can be family, it could be your therapist. um Asking and having them, because you're going to need to ask for help. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's as humans, it's impossible for us to get a non-biased view of ourselves. um
Okay.
and when
I'm
I
slightly
yeah,
concerned about identities, right?
yeah,
Labels, right?
yeah,
So, you know, we've looked like, because we're not what we do, are we? Like, and it
no,
kind of like, it does behavior. Drinking is something that we do. So what drives us? If we're not what we do, what drives what we do? How we feel. So how you felt, right, was driving what you did. But we're not our feelings either. We're the we talked about this last when we spoke a couple of days ago. Haven't we? Like, it's like, for me, we are, our feelings come and go, right? So your anger, even in your toughest times, your anger came and go. It came and went, didn't it? You weren't angry 24/7. You weren't angry every waking moment, were you?
no, I wasn't. I had a lot of great times with my parents. I had a lot of great times with my family, my friends.
So
More
if
so than bad times, I'd say
yeah,
too.
so the kind of, but like our feelings come and go, but when they go, when our anger goes, because I get angry as well, yeah.
Yeah,
But when my anger goes, I'm still there. Do you see what I
yeah,
mean? Like, so
yeah. It's cyclical. I think that's all part of the guilt shame cycle that's talked about amongst adoptees.
you talk about the authentic self, and
Yeah,
we're not our behaviors, we're not our feelings. We're the kind of, like, with the screen on which the the feelings appear,
yeah,
and the feelings drive our behavior. It's an area that fascinates me, right? 'Cause we watch a lot of telly, we watch a lot of TV, and the only kind of yeah, well, my best friend died in a car crash 21 years ago, and he was a high functioning alcoholic, but he drove to the pub every night and would have 2 pints, 8 pints, 10 pints, and he died whilst driving back from the pub, which really it hit me very hard. But other than that, the cop shows, you know, when we watch cop shows, the only knowledge of alcoholics that I have really is watching cop shows, and you see the AA stuff, and I think, well, if we get confused about, isn't it a bit confusing, like, because we're not our behavior, but you know, this, I wanted to ask you about that, but I wanted to ask it in a gentle way, because I don't really have I don't have lived experience of this, right? It seems a little bit tricky. I don't like labels. So what do you make of all that?
Yeah, so I think are you talking in regards to the AA stuff that you see,
No,
or
I'm talking
overall?
in
Yeah,
general about, you know, like, I hope I've said that respectfully, right?
yeah, no, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay, cool. So one thing about me is sometimes I think I've caused upset, and I
Mhm.
haven't, and
Yeah,
sometimes I haven't a clue, but I've caused upset. I'm not, you know, my antennae, my emotional
yeah,
intelligence, I think is
yeah,
fairly high, but clearly it's not high enough, because you know, I upset people unintentionally. So I'm kind of sensitive about that. But, you know, what do you think about the idea that um, we are what we do?
mm. I don't think we are what we do. I think what we do is a reaction of what was done to us. So, um, I don't necessarily, me personally, I don't believe in good people and bad people. I think, again, going back to like how we were, and this is something that we talked about yesterday, I think as humans, biologically, like when we first were around, we weren't here to be good or bad people. We were here to eat, reproduce, and recreate. Um, and that, I think that's like the very root of being a human when you dumb everything down. So I think when you see people doing, or when we see people doing bad things, I don't see them as bad. I see them as misunderstood. I see them. This is what helped me the most. Um, I see people as sick, and this is how my mentors described it to me. Um, it doesn't matter if you're adopted or not. Um, um, you can even use this. So, for example, for adoptees with like a parent, where you say, they don't understand me. They treat me like this and that. They're extremely harsh. They might be tiger parents. You say, okay, I think they're sick. Now, because of this, like a cancer patient, you're not going to be upset with them because now you have to go sit in the hospital with them. You have to take them everywhere, do things with them, to help them. You have a sense of empathy. And I think with this type of empathy, that's what helps growth within humans, whether it's the person who's sick or it's the person who's helping. And that way you don't hold such, you might not be like, think of it as a chore. It's something that you get to do. It's a privilege. And I think when we look at bad people, quote unquote, when we start looking at them as sick people, I think that's when, as a society, we start to heal and see more improvement.
Yeah, I like that, because I do think you know, anything that makes us more empathetic is a good thing.
Yeah,
Anything that stops us blaming others or
yeah,
ourselves is a good thing.
yeah. And
Love
a
for
lot
others,
of a
love for
lot,
ourselves.
yeah, a lot of times now, I think too, where if I see something I don't like or something, okay, for instance, in Philadelphia, we have a really high murder rate right now with guns. One, I think it might be the highest in the country, or one of the highest in the countries of murder rates with homicides with arms. And I find myself reading these news pieces and I get really upset about it. And then instead of like sitting there and being upset, I'll think to myself, what am I doing for this? What am I doing to help? And a lot of times, I'll find myself not doing not doing anything and just watching life go by. Whereas, I look at my mom, for instance, and she's a big advocate for ending gun violence. And I'll see she does stuff with our church, she does stuff with the community to help raise awareness for this. So I think doing more of those types of things can help people as well. So I think that's when I started a group. Since I moved, I stopped doing it. Called Adopted Voices, where it was a bunch of adoptees who got together and we just got to kind of sit around and just talk about what was bothering us. And I think starting that helped me more than anything else has helped me. Because finally I was like, I've purpose, um I have something I need to do in this life.
Yeah. Have you seen that? We've seen a model by a guy called Robert Dilts, Dilts. Yeah. He's a bit like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and purpose is right at the top.
Mhm.
So it might be worth you having a look at, because it validates what you just said. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. That's awesome.
yeah. It's right at the top. I think up there with consciousness, being aware of who we are. Being aware.
Yeah. I think that comes with a lot of responsibility. That's like one of the more difficult parts, I think, is being aware of who you are, because that means you have to understand bad things that you do as well. And then it comes the responsibility of understanding that, how we were just saying, that you aren't those bad things.
Well,
those are just
all adoptees struggle with identity.
Yeah.
Like, most human beings struggle with identity, but most of us think, like, to put it really simply, most of us think that we're the voice in our head that tells us we're not good enough.
Yeah.
Well, we weren't born with that voice in our head, so
yeah,
it's us, right?
Yeah, that's what I think for that's what I kind of want my research to help with in the future is policy for adoptees, because again, that's where my why I named my group Adopted Voices, as a kind of a double entendre of people hearing things that they thought spoke for them, so they're adopting someone else's voice.
Right.
And then it's also adoptees speaking out, so you have the adoptee's voice. So I think through my research in the future, I want to help do more informative research to help parents, foster parents, be able to understand more, and maybe have to go through a little bit more rigorous training of the traumas and how to handle them, more classes and lessons of what adoptees need growing up, because that's when the foundations are being put in. That's when that voice starts that we were just talking about. And better equip them with information.
Brilliant. So people, obviously, if you're not doing the Adopted Voices group at the moment, can people get you on Facebook, or have you got anywhere that people can get in touch with you, or would you?
Yeah, my email is CARAYAMAYER@gmail.com.
Okay, we'll put a link in the show notes.
Yeah, that'd be great. And if anybody needs help or just to talk, I'm always available. And I'm one of those people where I mean it, where it doesn't matter what time it is. I can always sleep later, or I can always do other things later. I think these people are more important.
Thanks, Christian.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for your time and inspiring our guests, inspiring our listeners today, being an inspiration.
Yeah. Thank you so much for inviting me. I always enjoy feeling like people want to hear what I have to say.
Cool. Thanks a lot, listeners. We'll speak to you very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.